Yo, welcome to another episode of Source and Company. I'm your host, Source, of course. As always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Smitty Source on both of those. You can follow the Source and Company Instagram as well, which is Source NCO podcast _ RVA. Follow the, what else? Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, specifically YouTube, for all the Source and Company episodes. All right. And here we go again. It's been a minute, but today's company, I haven't talked to this guy directly in a minute, but he is quite the character. He is quite the character. And you wouldn't think so, judging by his job, which is he's the executive producer. He is the executive director of the North Carolina Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities. So he is a medical expert. He has a TED Talk. Bro, I got a TED Talk. What you mean? Ain't too many people I know that got TED Talks, but he is one of them. Not to mention, he's produced for Camp Low. He actually graduated from North Carolina Central University for his bachelor's and master's with Ninth Wonder and went to school with Fonte, etc. So he's down with that whole crew. And he's done hip hop summits with the likes of Play from Kid and Play. So much going on, so much to talk about. So let's get into it. My man, Cornell Wright. What's up, bro?
What's up, man? You're not used to calling my government.
Bro, I know. I was like, Cornell. Calling home. Yes, sir. How you feeling?
I'm good, man. I'm feeling really good. Good to see you, man. You look great.
I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate it. It's been a minute. But you've done a lot with the time from the last time I've seen you in person to now, man. You have been moving and shaking in the medical world specifically, but we will get into all of that. We got so much to get into and not a lot of time. So we're going to see how much we can do in an hour, all right?
Yeah.
So you were born by the, no, you weren't born by, were you born by?
I actually was. So I'm the youngest of four. My dad was in the Marine Corps, and so I was born on a naval base.
Wow.
In a place called Cherry Point here in North Carolina. And then we got transferred when I was young to Camp Lejeune. So Jacksonville, North Carolina is where I was raised. And so, just being in a whole military family, it's a different world. Like, not to be cliche, but like where I come from is a different world. And
it's real.
It is real. And so like my mindset was different. Like I knew nothing about, black college culture or any of that stuff before I went to a black college. But you asked me about military culture, I could tell you every rank based on just the emblems. I could tell you all all that stuff when I was younger. So I was just so engrossed in it.
Yeah. How was that? Did y'all bounce around a lot, or you were?
No, I was lucky. So, like I said, being the youngest of four, we moved from Cherry Point Naval Base to Camp Lejeune, and then living on base to out in town, as we call it. So those were my only moves before I moved to college.
Really?
Yeah.
That's rare, right?
Very rare, very rare. There were opportunities, but like my dad had opportunity to go to like Japan before because he did 20 years. So he got the opportunity while I was alive, go to Japan. He went overseas a couple times when I was a little small child, but we stayed here. And there was one year when I was in probably late elementary, early middle school, where my dad, he switched what he was doing because he was like a communications person in his job, his MOS. And so at the end of his career, he switched and started doing like substance abuse counseling for the military. So he had to do his precepting in a place called Beaufort, South Carolina, at the Naval Base Hospital there. And so for a year, he was down there, but we still stayed up here, but we would go down and visit him. It was like a 6-hour trip. And with not all the options that you have now,
True.
It's probably shorter now, but yeah, it was crazy. And then, it's like at that time, I think my oldest brother was probably gone and went to the Air Force. So it was just, always a long trip with like, you know, it was 4 kids, but then it was like 3 kids still left at the house. And, my sister and I are like 5.5 years apart. So I had an older brother who passed, and then my sister, and then I have another brother, and then me. So my brother that's closest to me is 2 years apart from me. My sister, 5 years apart, and then my oldest brother, we were 8 years apart.
Gotcha. See, how'd you escape military life?
So
did you even think about it?
So my father always told us, he was like, yo, if you consider going this route, don't go in the Marine Corps. Like he pushed us to like pick something different. So both my brothers went to the Air Force. My oldest brother, he was a MP or military police. And then my brother that's 2 years older than me, which is funny because I don't know if you ever met him, but he's also a producer. But he does IT, but he also, when in the military, was working on like satellites. So
wow.
he was also in the Air Force. So he was stationed. We have this running joke about like the Air Force puts like Black people in the most random places, across the world where there are no other Black people. So my oldest brother got stationed in South Dakota. And my brother that's 2 years older than me, he got stationed in Utah. And actually my nephew was born in Utah.
That's a whole different lifestyle, especially Utah. Well, actually both of them. I mean,
Yeah.
Utah, you're probably around more people, but South Dakota, your own. My homeboy went to South Dakota State. So I've heard the stories.
There's not much out there.
Yeah. Just open land.
Real flat.
No parts of it. No, thank you. So what led you to an HBCU, and then what led you specifically to North Carolina Central University?
So my sister and I were the only ones like straight out of high school to actually pick the college route, right? So my sister ended up going to ECU at first, so East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. And so all the guys, like me and my brothers, we all were into music with my dad. And so my oldest brother played the trumpet. My brother that's 2 years older than me, he, like me, we played multiple instruments. So, but our main instrument, our percussion, or the drums, and the other instruments around the percussion family. So we were really good. Like we were the only 2 Black kids like on the drum lines or whatever. So in concert band, we were always like first chair, like band was a thing for us. Like we didn't play organized sports in school, but we were known as the dudes from the band, leave them alone, they good. Like, so like I ain't have street cred, but I had street grace. Because it's like,
that is definitely a thing.
It is a thing, because it's like, hey, leave them alone, they good, because I live, and it's funny because my wife and I had this conversation. She lived on a different side of town. We grew up in the same city.
Okay.
And dated in high school for a little bit, and then rekindled when we got to college. Well, she got to college because she's 2 years younger than me. So I always say I grew up hood adjacent, right? Like my neighborhood is kind of renowned, but the side of the neighborhood I lived on is where the houses were. And there's like one street that kind of divides like the houses from like the duplexes. Yeah. And then there's another street that divides like the duplexes from the apartments. And so, we used to walk to elementary school. So you had to walk through all of that to get to school. And so, there were a few people that would try to test us, but my dad put us in karate at an early age. So, we won't have none of that. I remember getting chased by this one white dude one time, a little country dude, had like a mullet and all this stuff. He had a knife. His name was Willie. Willie chased me home one time with that knife, and I got away. This back before I discovered how good food tasted. So I was much smaller, much more athletic.
was
So
like,
I
where's
kind of
this
went. But so yeah, I grew up quote unquote hood adjacent. And so that grace that like really, you know, that my neighborhood, because we had some thugs in my neighborhood, right?
Right.
So there was this one time, like cats from our neighborhood that, you know, they were out there slinging and doing stuff. These cats, this is before Uber, right? These
Mhm.
cats were so pressed to beat this dude up. They all took taxi cabs to the high school, found this dude, beat him up, and then got back in the cabs and went back home.
Wow.
Yeah. So to avoid that type of stuff, like we were like, hey, I'm just trying to, you know, get good grades, play this music. And you know, music is opening up to people. It's a gateway, right? So
Absolutely.
I always say like breaking bread opens doors. But if you're good at your craft and you make people move, that
Mhm.
rhythm helps them, right? So I always talk about in my work now how there are community relationships built off the community rhythms that exist. And if we're not careful, we could disrupt those already existing rhythms by the way we enter or exit. And so I got a whole theoretical concept called relationship rhythms that talks about that, right? But keeping the rhythm, keeping the time, and making people like move and being good at it, that wrote our ticket to have our grace. So, I mean, there were a couple people that tried us, but like for the most part, um, you know, that the music aspect kept us out of trouble.
Gotcha.
And you know, my father was like real strict. So I used to call my dad the Godfather because he was just like, all my family's from Philly. I'm the only one that was born and raised in North Carolina. Even like my siblings were all born in Philly. So, you know, Philly people got this like different look about them. Like when they dress up, they look like gangsters and stuff. They got the hats, they got the London fogs and all this stuff, and the
Trust me,
gloves.
I have cousins from Philly, so I feel what you said.
So, and I know I'm taking this long time to answer your question, but when I got to the point where I'm picking colleges, you know, I was pretty smart. I didn't always apply myself like I should, but I
Right.
was smart enough to, you know, get looks. And so I went to this went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, you know, UNC, and they had this like pre-college program called Project Uplift.
Mhm.
They brought like Black and minority students in to help booster applications. So you stay there for like a few days, and this was in '96. So my junior year, end of my junior year, went and just met like all types of people that I still connect with to this day. I got a homegirl named Vahisha Hassan, who we've been friends since I met her at Project Uplift.
Mhm.
And like, I mean, that's a whole nother like story upon story about it in itself. But when I went to Project Uplift at Chapel Hill, I was like, yo, I am going to college. Like, this is a whole nother world. And then I ended up, I used to play my sister's first husband used to play music. Well, he plays music. He was a keyboard player. And so since I played drums, it was like a match made in heaven. So
Right.
I was playing for the college gospel choir when I was in high school. So
Mm.
anytime I would come up to go visit my sister, he would drag me along, like, hey, we need a drummer. It's like, come with us. And then I was like touring with the church and the choir. And like, so before I even got to college, I was playing for this choir. When I got to college, I was playing for the choir. And then started playing for other choirs, started playing for dudes. And it was so funny because I went to North Carolina Central and I never played for their choir. Like, so, and I never marched at Central. I marched a little bit in high school, but I mostly did like concert band and symphonic wind ensemble. And so I read music. I used to sight read. Like, I mean, I was into it. I used to write music all the time. Like, limited capacity of understanding even musicality at that point. But I went on a tour. My sister lived in Durham. Went on a tour for my spring break. I went saw her, and I went on a tour for Central. Now I had already been accepted to a bunch of colleges, including Central.
Right.
I went on a tour, and it was like a Tuesday or a Thursday. So like literally, you know how Black folks do. They just drop you off at the campus and like, we'll pick you up at this same spot at whatever time, right?
Yeah.
So I just joined the tour, And what you don't know about Central is there's like a few things that happen throughout the week. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's a break in classes called 1040 break. So for like 1040 to like 11 something, you had this little break so the classes could sync back up. And, you know, they have like longer classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays than they do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So, so it's like 1040 break happens in the middle of the tour. Now, the tour guide was from Trinidad. She was fire. She was fine. So I'm like, yo, it like, if the faculty look like this, it's gonna be a problem, right? Then in the middle of the tour, like people just start walking out and like populating the earth, right? And I'm just like, yo, it was so many beautiful Black people. Just, I mean, I had never seen that many Black people in one spot, like with all Black people. Because I grew up in a military town, so the population is usually like 60, 40, 70, 30, you know? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I mean, they were beautiful. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care who else then accepted me. I'm coming here. And that's what started my love for Black colleges, and especially North Carolina Central University.
That is dope. That's dope for real, because I can see that. I think back to when my oldest daughter and I went on her college tour to JMU, James Madison. And I remember going to I forgot what it was called, the quad, the lawn, whatever it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And we just happened to be out there, and it was just it was small groups of Black people, and they kind of, you know, they would speak to us, because I guess it wasn't that many Black people that were touring that day, but they definitely were speaking to us. And this one group called us over, and you could feel the camaraderie just from that. So I can imagine just being around a sea of Black faces, how that would feel.
So you remember how like you see a Black person you don't know, and you do the head nod?
Absolutely.
It was like a wave of that feeling you get when you do the head nod. It was just like, and nobody's not even looking at me, but it's just like you feel home.
Yeah.
I felt like I was at home. The other piece I was going to add to that, so we had 1040 break on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but on Wednesdays, and I didn't know this when I took the tour, we had this thing called chicken days. So on Wednesdays for lunch, it was like every week they would serve like fried chicken, like macaroni and cheese, green beans, mashed potatoes and gravy.
Right.
And then they also had like a baked chicken option, which a few people got. But man, that fried chicken was like, it made you forget about any of the drama you would have in that week. And like people would dress up, and then we would have like DJs in the caf, and then we'd have like, so this is crazy. The first time and only time I met Twista, the rapper, was on a chicken day at North Carolina Central. He came and did like a autograph signing, and I was like helping the DJ. Yeah, that was normal for us.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Was that kind of a thing? Because you know, the Black college experience that I didn't have is different. It's definitely different. But a lot of people that I speak to say they could never see themselves going anywhere else.
Yeah, like I was telling you earlier, like, so what I didn't tell you was I did 5 years of undergrad, not just because I was having so much fun, but I was trying to do everything, right? So my major was political science, but I had enough classes that I could have double majored in mass comm, because when I got to college, I got connected with this dude, and he worked at the local radio station on campus. And so they brought me in because he thought I looked like, so there's two stories that's pretty funny, right? He thought I looked like somebody that he knew, but I wasn't that person.
Okay.
So when I was at orientation, I met this dude. And so he came up to me, he was like, oh, you're not such and such. But we still started talking. So he's like, hey, when you come back, meet me here and I'm gonna get you connected. And I was like, what? Little did I know that conversation changed my whole life, right? So I got connected with that dude. I went to my first concert because of that dude. It was the Budweiser Superfest, 1997. It was in Greensboro Coliseum. It was Missy, Timberland, Genuine, Aaliyah, Kid Capri, Bone Thugs and Harmony, and Mary J. Blige. My very first concert, right?
Wow.
And I had like my very first date at that concert. I had no money. I had no car. And I'm at this concert. And my homeboy, man, he saved me because I was like, oh yeah, my homeboy got all, he's like, I said, he got everything. He got all my cash, everything. So sure enough, man, he bailed me out. And so that was, I learned so much from that dude named Chris Taylor, right? So Chris got me hooked up with a radio station. So I started learning how to do the news at the radio station, how to write the news, how to do PSAs, how to do FYIs. Then another dude latched me on, his name is Jerry Carter. He's from Virginia, right? Gary taught me the behind the scenes and on the boards. Well, he taught me behind the scenes and the on-air personality stuff about radio. So he taught me, so he had me as the assistant music director, for the radio station, because I was assisting him, and assistant program director. So I was assisting him on like the flow of how people came in. This was public radio, it was a jazz station. So people were volunteering their time. So I remember coming in and like, we would have these NPR spots. And after, if you know anything about NPR goes to their, the thing at the top of the hour. And then they speak for like maybe 3 to 4 minutes. And then there's a break. And then they'll say something like, and you're listening to NPR. And before they go into the next part of the rest of the NPR segment, they give you this pause where you can break in and do your own. So we would break in and do our own like local news. So we're sitting up there, we're reading the news, and like the on-air personality goes after us, it starts playing records or, playing songs. So I was doing that. That was my introduction. I was happy. Well, it was an election that year because, we got to school in like August, like a few months, there was like an election and they were running like, election for mayor. And this black dude was running. No, not that time. But there was a election for mayor, and the dude was running. He ended up winning or whatever. His name was like Nick Tennyson or whatever. And so the guy that was supposed to come in after I did my little election, report of like what the precincts were reporting at that time, he never showed up. Again, these is people from the community volunteering their time. So what you get is what you get. And of course, not being old enough to understand, there's some adult things going on. People had some addiction issues and some other things. So this probably helped people stay out of trouble.
Gotcha.
And so dude ain't show up. So Jerry threw me on the radio. Now, what I didn't tell you is that I told you my dad was a musician, but my dad was like a huge music dude, right? Like in terms of listening, teaching us about different music. So like we knew about Parliament Funkadelic, we knew about like Louis Armstrong, we knew about classical music, we knew about gospel music. Now the gospel music was prevalent in my house,
Right.
but my dad taught us all the other stuff. Like we would watch like Woodstock, we would listen to Herbie Hancock, we would listen to Jimi Hendrix, and it's crazy, right? So like my musical repertoire was huge, but the main two pieces of music that we would listen to, the main two genres were either gospel or jazz. So I felt pretty confident. Like, in my mind, I felt confident. And then he was like, hey, we need you to go on and fill in until this dude gets here, right? Because they still thinking dude coming. About 10 minutes in, dude ain't show up. So they're like, hey, we're just gonna need you to just keep going, right? So I'm like, you know what? There's a formula, and anybody that work in radio will tell you there's like a formula format to what you play. And we had like a color-coded system. So I'm in there and I'm just like, and after a while, I was like, man, I'm gonna be here all night. I'm gonna play some stuff I like. So I'm like grabbing records and I'm playing stuff like my dad used to listen to. And the phone started lighting up, right?
Oh, word?
And I'm like, uh-oh, I must be in trouble. because the number one rule in radio is don't have no dead air. So I'm making sure like there's no dead air, and I'm scared to death. I mean, I'm sweating bullets, and so people are calling me. So I start picking up the phone in between songs. It was like, WNCU 90.7 FM. How may I help you? It's just like, yo, I don't know who you are, but you are playing some hits, bro. Like, I ain't heard this song in like 20, 30 years. How old are you? And I'm like, I literally just turned 18. And they're like, no, how you know about this song? I'm playing like Nautilus. I'm playing like all types of like just straight up like Bob James, Foreplay. I'm playing anything I get my hands on that I recognize. Like B Sharp Quartet. I'm like on it. And so the station manager calls, and I'm like, oh, I know I'm in trouble. He was like, yeah, I appreciate that you were able to fill in. He said, you actually doing a good job. And if you want, we can make you a personality. You gotta follow the little schedule that we got here because everything's color coded. So you gotta play these songs. Like there's like CDs, and so they got like asterisks on like the ones that you're supposed to play off the CD. Right. I'm playing like B-sides. I'm playing non-hit because I don't understand that you got to report back to the radio. I mean the record companies at this point and say how many spins got what. So once I started to understand that, then I got my own show. Like dude never showed up, and the late night guy ended up coming in, and he would rock from like 12 o'clock just until whenever. And this dude, he was awesome. Like he had the incense and all that stuff, like setting the atmosphere.
One of those.
Yeah. So that's how I got into radio. But that led me to doing everything. That relationship led me to doing club promotion. We had a hip hop show on the weekends. I would come on there sometimes. I met so many people just from those experiences that I got this nickname. So my nickname on the radio was Corleone, right?
Right.
Because when I was in, back home, they called my dad Godfather. So I was like a smaller version of him.
Yeah, it makes
sense. Then, they called me Corleone, like, the little version of Godfather.
Yeah.
And then in college, they added a little piece to it. And so they were like, yo, man, you almost famous out here. Like, you always here when the celebrities are here. And so I got the moniker Corleone the semi-celeb because I was like, a little part-time celebrity on campus. I'm hosting shows, I'm DJing, I'm hype man on the mic, I'm doing it all. We doing TV, we doing radio. Like I was pretty known.
So you became a semi-celeb and used that to your advantage as your moniker, and you ended up actually going to school with and even doing some things with some bona fide celebs, or later to become bona fide celebs. I guess if we talk about play, we're talking about, play's been around since the 80s, but we'll get into that in a minute. But you actually introduced me when I came down to North Carolina Central University to a beat battle. You were hosting, and 2/3 of little brother was in the building. Cesar Comanche was there. I feel like Edgar.
Funny story about Cesar, right? Let me tell you this real quick. Cesar and my brother that's 2 years older than me, went, they graduated together. So Cesar is from Jacksonville, North Carolina, like me and my brother. We used to walk to school every day together.
Oh, word?
I didn't know Cesar was Cesar until I saw his face.
That is hilarious. That's hilarious how you run into somebody that you've known and they are doing their thing, because he was already, doing his thing then.
Cesar, I ain't gonna say his real name, because I don't know if he does that, or I don't know. But we used to call him by his real name, and there was more than one person with that name. It was a common name. So we would always say, blank blank with the waves, because he always had like he's bald now, like so you wouldn't know, but he always had like the freshest waves, and it was just like him and my brother would have like wave battles, like
Wave check. They
so,
think the wave check is new. Nah, man, been wave check since back in
yeah.
the day.
So what you're talking about is, like, meeting little brother and in the different groups, right? And so Fonte,
Fonte.
I met Fonte first. And so this is back when I thought I could rap a little bit, right?
Before you go, let me tell you this. I'm not gonna tell the story today, but Fonte carried me. He carried me here in Richmond. I'll tell you later. I'm gonna save it just in case one day I interview Fonte or Pooh, because Pooh was there as well. D-Rock was there too, actually.
So so I'm thinking, this is my freshman year. So I'm like, so Chitley Hall at North Carolina Central is like the male dorm. Like it's infamous, right? Like there's stories about Biggie Smalls coming to do a concert and he's hanging out in Chitley. This is before I got there. So I'm walking around Chitley. It's a Saturday. I'll never forget this. Like as long as I live. It's a Saturday night. There's nothing to do. I ain't got no car. I ain't got no money because I didn't need to leave the dorm. Everything was there. So at a Black college, I don't know how it was where you went, but at a Black college, you can get your hair cut, you can get some food, somebody had a hot plate, you had everything at your disposal in the dorms. So, I mean, I didn't have to go nowhere. So I'm walking around and we were divided by like the original Chitley and then they had built the annex. So I lived on annex. So I went over to Maine and that's where like most of the football players and the older people were, upper class people were. And me and Fonte actually had a class together my freshman year, right? My first semester. And this dude was hilarious. So Fonte was on the football team. And we'd be in class and we had this teacher, she was Asian. And so she had a different kind of accent.
Right.
And so when she would talk, it's like certain words sounded different. I'll just say it that way. And so when she would call your name, you couldn't really tell if she was calling your name or not. And so there were just like things that would happen in class. And then Fonte, like he wouldn't start the conversation, but he would say a comment that would just like make it just blow up and be funny as a mug, right?
He still does that today on Questlove Supreme.
Bruh, the Fonte you see on that is authentic Fonte, right? So I'm walking in the dorms and I'm on Main in Chitley, and there's a bunch of dudes in a cipher rapping. And it's like cats that there's like football dudes or whatever, and like they created a vacuum. I say it that way.
Right.
My daughter just walked in, so I won't say the other word, but yeah, they created a vacuum. So I was just in there like, so I just like put myself in the cipher. I got the rhythm going. I'm like, yeah, whenever it's time, I'm gonna drop something. Like I don't know what I'm gonna drop, but I'm gonna drop something. They never got to me because they got to Fonte, and Fonte just started rapping, right? I'm like, oh, that's the dude from class. Okay, he's a little funny dude, right? Okay. Oh, this dude's spitting. Oh. And here's the thing, when anybody that'll tell you a story about Fonte from those days, maybe to even now, when Fonte closes his eyes, he spazzes out, like lyrically. This dude rapped for like 30, 45 minutes straight in a cipher. And I'm just like, whoa. That's when I knew Fonte was a problem. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna walk out, keep my little rhymes to myself, and go about my business. That was my first musical introduction to Fonte. And the other one was on Chicken Day. And it was years later, where Sean Dawn, another cat, that was part of Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
We all went to Central together. He's from New York. Sean Dawn he's a character. If you don't follow him, please do, because that dude he's funny. And he could spit, he had bars, right? And he had a voice, he's got this voice that goes with it. It's just, it all works. So Fonte's battling this dude, God bless the dead, named Claude. And they actually mentioned Claude in the album The Listening.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's a verse where they talking about dudes wearing like flip-flops and hanging out with white girls named Caitlin. They talking about Claude, God bless the dead. And so Sean Don is battling Claude outside of the cafeteria, or we call it the caf. And they going at it, right? Fonte comes up and sees what's going on. He tells Sean, just back down. I got this. And Fonte just starts destroying this dude lyrically. I mean, it was a massacre. And Claude was smart, like real. He was like from DMV area, real smart dude. He had spit, and he had his own style to him, right? But man, I had never seen anybody beat Fonte lyrically in my lifetime. Like, dude was such a problem. And so when they formed like Voltron, that's a whole nother story that we can get into. But it was just like, yeah, because who went to school with us too. He was like, by this time we were living in these new dorms, and they had suites, like suites to the rooms.
Right.
So Pooh lived like 2 suites over from me. So these cats, I mean, it was just a big family. Like a lot of cats that went to Central around this time are doing amazing things. Like one of Nice's roommates is a dude named Rashawn Rucker, and we call him Ruck. Ruck is like this world-renowned, award-winning photographer and artist. So he's got like paintings at like the Art Basel and all that stuff. Like, dude is a problem. Like, we went to school with problems, bro. Like,
it seems like it. Lyrical problems, artistic.
You know Yazara? You ever heard of Yazara?
Yeah, Yazara James.
She went to school with us too.
Yeah.
So all these like DC, Maryland cats, and blended with the North Carolina cats, and some of the the New York cats. If we went back and just looked at the people, like another dude, a friend of mine named Ayaji Hampton, his dad used to play drums for Luther.
Wow. So
remember that first concert I told you about?
Yeah.
When I came back to the dorm from that first concert, his dad was in the lobby, where we used to play spades. And his dad was just talking to us. And he had a show with Luther the next day at the same venue I had just left.
Wow.
So yeah, like college to me felt like an ongoing episode of the Cosby Show. Because it was like so many people would come in and out like on a daily basis that it became regular.
Yeah, I respect that. Man, that's a beautiful thing though. Because obviously not everybody's gonna get that experience, but y'all have that, like nobody can take that from y'all right. At that time. And again, I mentioned that when I came down after the battle, I ended up in the hallway and I called you because you were still inside. I was like, I'm trying to meet Knife. So you got me back in. I came up, met him, rapped a little bit and all that good stuff. So that's a dope memory. I always remember that because I met Knife that day and I actually met Apple Juice Kid. But that's another story because I actually saw him the next day and then saw him more in life. And he's doing this thing. He's out in Australia now and doing crazy things. So that's another guy. But let's talk about Knife real quick, bro. Like,
no, we can't leave that story yet. Hold on. I got to tell you the story.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm hosting that show that you talking about, right? I'm hosting the show. And so I'm shouting you out because you came all the way from Virginia to come to the show. I'm like, yo, we got cats in here all the way from Virginia. My man, Mike Source, dope lyricist. Like,
you played that joint. You played that joint.
Yeah, we played your joint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh. Little did I know that a little bit amount of love that I gave you got some other local dude jealous, right? So the little local dude had this little group. I'm not even gonna give you his name. Like, right. I ain't gonna even put no energy, no power towards that. But little dude got mad. And I say little dude because he's short. Like short-tempered and short in height. And so little dude got mad. He was like, now we shouted this dude out too. And his little crew. And So this little dude got mad and he creates a diss song about me. Now, mind you, I think at this point, I'm not even in college no more, but I'm just, getting out of grad school. So I still had ties to the university, still with helping out with music stuff. And we're doing hip hop summits. We're doing showcases. Me and Knife are doing beat battles called beat downs. And everything's good because that's a whole nother story. We'll get to that in a second. But so little dude makes a little diss track about me. He's saying some disrespectful stuff. Like, I had just got married in 2007, so he's talking about my wife and my house and all this stuff. I'm like, I had no clue this was going on because I'm not connected to campus like that. So somebody that was still on campus was like, yo, dude done made a diss song about you. I'm like, for what? Like, I thought we was all cool. Like, so apparently he got slighted because I gave somebody from Virginia more love than I gave somebody that was local, right? So they send me the track, and my first thing is, as a competitor, I don't care if it's sports, music, or whatever, I'm always competing with myself. So like what you say to me or about me has no consequence because I'm like, how am I gonna make myself better by stepping up to the challenge? So the challenge is never, to me, it's never about somebody else. It's about what am I going to do to elevate me in this spot. Right. Mm-hmm. So if we're doing a rap battle or a beat battle, I have no concern what you're gonna play next or what you're gonna say next, because I'm already thinking I'm already gonna win. So, and that's still me to this day. We can talk about how I moved that over into doing my health work.
Right.
But so I didn't respond, but I was upset, and I told a couple of friends, literally 2 friends. I told them about it, and he said, send me the track. So I emailed them the track. And the only thing they told me was, don't worry about it. We got it. I thought nothing of it, Dude, like later on, comes up. The dude that made the track came up and apologized, right? And I'm like, hey, man, what was this about? Like, do you feel good about yourself? Like, I'm like scolding him like he's a child at this point, right? Like, yo, what did you get out of this? What was the purpose of this? Like, I'm not even a threat to you, right? Or am I? And he was just like, man, and he told me out his mouth, man, you were so busy, showing love to that dude from Virginia, you forgot about the local people who've been down here, holding you down. And it's like, bruh, I shouted you out. Like, it's a show. Like, that dude drove on his own dime from Virginia to North Carolina to show love. Like, the least I can do is shout that brother out. And so, like, he got out of his feelings for a little bit. He had a partner that he used to rhyme with, and it was like years later, the partner came up to me. And it was some like random outing. We were just like all in the same place, but we never really interacted. And so the partner was like, hey, bro, I just want to apologize for my man. And I'm like, where is this coming from? I was like, yo, me and you never had beef. He was like, yeah. He said, but I had to hear about it. And I was like, oh. And I left it like that. I was like, you know what? I'm so sorry. I said, but I didn't ask anybody to do nothing. I just, I was venting and I was upset. And your man said some disrespectful stuff about my wife. And my boys look at her like they sister. So,
hey, not everybody as gracious as you are. That's what it is.
Yeah. So it added to the Corleone moniker, right?
For real.
But,
wow.
You were about to ask about Knife, and
yeah, just about the relationship and just how you feel seeing them grow.
Right.
As everything,
I'm the biggest fan, cheerleader of all my people, right? Especially from Black colleges, especially from North Carolina Central University. Like, we're the Eagles, so we soar high. We fly high, we soar high, right? And so I remember when The Listening came out. First Little Brother album that came out on was it ABB Records, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so funny. I was at Chapel Hill going to like a step show or something. It was some event they were having. And, you know, at this point, I had then been doing like party promotion, you know, doing clubs. So like, you know, I knew enough people and enough people knew me or knew my name. So it was just like, hey, we good. So every time I would see Knight, it was always cordial, right? Always, hey, what's up, brother? You know, that dude showed me the first copy of The Listening that he had, like that was being pressed and put out. And I'm like geeking, like, oh, what? Like, oh my gosh, like, this is so exciting. So, you know, I was like, yo, whatever, and this is God truth. I was like, yo, whatever you need, I got you. Whatever you need, I got you. And I tell that to people, and my homeboy, Dr. Kevin Ahmad Jenkins, he's up at UPenn, right? We grew up together in Jacksonville. Didn't really know each other. I saw him on a college tour at North Carolina Central one summer. And I walked by and saw him and his mom taking the tour. And I told him, I said, yo, good to see you. I know you from back home. Whatever you need, I got you, right? He took me up on that offer one day. He was doing an event. He was doing like motivational speaking and stuff, like in college, like as a freshman. Even before that, he was like in journalism, interviewing like Destiny's Child and, you know, the original Destiny's Child. Wow. So like he knew Beyonce before Beyonce knew who she was. Mm-hmm. So he was plugged in, like people from my circle, like whether it be the inner or like the outer rim or, you know, just people we've been around, all of us do great things. So I told my homeboy Kevin, he was like, yo, whatever you need, I got you. He called me on it. He was like, hey, I'm doing this event. I need press. Got him press because I had the connections with the radio station, and the lady who taught me radio, Beverly Mahone, she taught me how to write and do the news. She was working in radio, but also back in the news. So I called her up, and she brought news coverage to his event. So we've been like thick as thieves since then. So I told Knight, like, yo, Knight, whatever you need, you know, here's my number. I've had the same number since probably like 1999. Same cell number, it ain't changed. So like when you texted me the other day, I was like, oh, Source got the same number too.
Sure do.
So Knife called me on it, right? I remember Knife calling me. I was probably in grad school when this happened, or like late undergrad when this happened. Called me, he was like, bruh, he said, I'm doing all this stuff for these other schools, and like they reaching out, like they getting me to do classes and all this stuff. He said, I ain't heard a peep from my alma mater. Like, so I was like, yo, we need to change that. So I set up a meeting, and we got Knife talk, you know, plugged in with the music department. And so they allowed us to do these beat battles. So it was like me and Knife and a couple other people, homeboy, Dr. Kawachi Clemens. He wasn't doctor then, but he is now.
All these doctors.
Bruh, like we got Black excellence going on over here, right?
Really?
So we started doing the beat battles. Let me tell you how genius Knife is, right? Knife starts teaching the producers in the beat battle, before the beat battle, about music and hip hop history from the beginning to contemporary. And as he was doing that, I think he really found his love for passing on knowledge more so to people that look like him. But just musicians, period, though, because he was already doing this. So I'm not claiming anything other than being a connection, right? And so, and that's been the story of my life. I've always been a connector. And so, I mean, just like, you know, you talked about earlier, like connecting you with Naeem, right? That's my job. Like, I don't need anything out of this. I ain't asking for nothing other than a verse or a rhyme or a beat I made or something. But so we got connected. We did the beat battles. Ninth is teaching these cats before the beat battles. And I got the NPR came and actually did, local NPR came and did a story on it. And I still have that somewhere on one of my computers or one of my hard drives.
Wow.
And so they interviewed Ninth, they interviewed me, and some of the people that were producers in the beat battle. And so I produced too, but I didn't join the beat battles. I was being the host. And a few months before one of the beat battles, I was at a wedding, and it was funny because we kind of crashed the wedding. One of the dudes was singing at the wedding, and he needed an instrumental that didn't exist. So I went in, got the song, chopped it up, and made an instrumental out of nothing.
That's dope.
The dude was able to sing at the wedding to the instrumental I chopped up. So that got us invited to the wedding. And so we went to the wedding, because you go to the wedding, you ain't charging nobody to go to the wedding. So it's like, hey, just show up.
Right.
So I went to the wedding. They're like, man, come to the wedding. So my wife and I got dressed and we went to the wedding. Yeah, we were about to leave and go home. And they were like, nah, man, you gotta come to the reception. Like, this wouldn't have happened without you. So like, come to the reception. So I'm like, you sure? Like, I'd have been married. So like, I know how it was when you got people add to the people to the party, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, no. So the groom was like, no, man, come on. And so, because all my boys were Kappas, like it just happened. So like it just kept growing. And more people would get into the fold. You meet new people. They, treat you like you family too. You treat them like you family,
Right.
like their family. And so went to the wedding, and they were talking about this dude that kept going to the champagne punch bowl like over and over again, right? It's like, yeah, that dude like Money Mike, because like from Friday, the Friday movie. And so we were just laughing, like, I was like, you know who that is, right? They were like, nah, who? So yeah, that's dude from Camp Low. They were like, Camp Low. I was like, Lucchini? This is it. What? Lucchini followed? It was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, I'm gonna go meet him. They're like, nah. I was like, nah. So I go up to him. He's at the Champagne Punch Bowl, and he's getting another hit. And he knew the groom and the bride, so that's why he's there. Because they like, I think, dude Swade from Camp Low, his lady worked with the bride or something like that, and so they were all cool.
Right.
So I said, hey, I know who you are. This is who I am. And I said, I don't even want anything for me. I said, I do produce, but that has nothing to do with this conversation. So I want to hook you up with Ninth and see if y'all can, get in and do some stuff, right? So I gave him my number. He reached out. I hooked him up with Ninth. They go and make Camp Low make some music with Ninth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, good, that's a good connection. So months later, Sway hits me back and is like, yo, I thought you said you produced too, right? Like, yeah, I do a little something. So still, I'm not thinking like selfishly.
Right.
So I go pick him up. I got this 2001 Ford Explorer Sport 2-door joint. And we in the car. I'm playing beats and he's just vibing. My wife got so mad with me because I let him smoke in my car. So she hit me with I'm so disappointed in you, like motherly kind of instinct thing, right? So I take him to where little brother and them recorded. This little spot in Durham. And so like Justice League and all them were recorded this spot.
Right.
So I took him over there to see who was over there. And you'll never guess who was in there. Like, you'll never guess who was in there. This is the funniest story. God bless the dead. So my homeboy Sean Don's in there, right? God bless the dead. Sean Price was in there.
Word.
Yep.
Working with Crisis?
Huh?
Was he working with Crisis?
He was, yeah, because, Crisis is a whole nother story. I got to tell you about that too.
Crisis
Sean,
yeah, go on.
So dope. So Sean P's in there, and like, so we playing beats. Like, and Sean P, I didn't even think about this until I'm telling the story. He's nodding to my beats. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
Right? And so Sean Don and Suede hook up.
Oh, what?
Yeah, so they do some music together, all right? And it's crazy because I'm still not thinking like selfishly about myself. And so we get back in the car, And he was like, that was cool, but like, I'm here for you. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I sent him home with a CD, right? It was probably like, because it was warmer. So it was probably like October, November when he hit me back. And I ain't recognize the number. He left a voice message. I still got the voice message to this day. He was like, yo, that Lumdi joint, it's done. It's over. We just recorded. And I'm like, the heck are you talking about, Lumdi? Forgot I sent him the Mickey Monkey sample from Smokey Robinson and the Miracles as one of the beats. So it goes, Lumdi, Lumdi, la, and so they called the joint Lumdi. He sent me like the original copy, and I'm done. I'm geeking out, right? And he was like, hey, my man Apple Juice is gonna do all the mixing, right? And he said, we need the original files so we can do the levels. So I called my brother, right? Because I remember exactly when I made the beat. I made the beat in 2004 in the summertime at my parents' house, because I had software hooked up to my parents' computer. This is desktop that world back then, right?
Yeah.
So I called my brother. I was like, hey, I need you to go to Dad's computer because I need the files from this particular song, because Camp Lo just recorded it, and we got to mix it down. Like, they're gonna get it mixed down, right? So they can send it to the record label. My brother goes, yo, Dad's computer crashed. We lost a bunch of stuff when his computer crashed. So I don't think we have that anymore. And I'm like, no. You know what I had to do? I had to get my brother to tell me what the BPMs were. And I had to recreate that whole beat. I don't know if you've ever had to do anything like that in your life, but with the amount of pressure of like people's careers hanging on the balance, it weighed in, and trying to get that thing perfect, I got it almost exactly perfect. So the original recording is so slightly different from what ended up being the pressing that they put out as a single and they did a video for, because I had to recreate the beat, and I had to think about like the drums I used and like, the different, pats and what was the snare. Yeah. And then the beat was such a syncopated rhythm. It was like,
it's offbeat. It's offbeat.
Yeah. And it was like, I literally was like, my dad would just play music all day. So that was the only summer in my whole college career where I came home for a whole summer. And he would just play music, and he'd have it just playing out throughout the house. So I'm in my room, I'm like, dang, that song is hot. So I had to recreate that whole song, right? Then there was some controversy about like who got the producer credit and all this. And Apple Juice was like, well, Corleone made the hit, made the beat, and I made the hit. I made it a hit or something. It was something crazy. So me and that dude don't really rock like that, because it was like, all you did was push buttons,
Wow.
So that's a whole nother story. I ain't got nothing against dude, but it was just like, I got introduced to the craziness of the business at that point. We had to pay, the label had to pay so much to clear the sample. Like, that's why it never really made it to an album. But what was awesome was when they did the professional mixdown, Young Guru of Jay-Z fame actually did the mix. And it's so funny because when he did the mix, he called Ninth, because him and Ninth are tight.
Right.
Now, I remember being at a comedy show at Central right after that. And I told Ninth, I was like, yeah, you heard that new Camp Lo Lumdi? He was like, yeah, that's like hot. I said, that's me. And I remember Ninth looking at me like, what?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. He said, you're not gonna believe this, but Guru is the one that let me hear it for the first time. And he was asking, who this cat was, and he didn't know what my name was, but he was like, yo, some dude from North Carolina did this. And he said, I didn't know it was you. And then I told him about the whole apple juice thing. And then ninth was so supportive of like people learning the business of music. And so he was like, bruh, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like, because I had got the lawyer and all that stuff from when I learned music industry at Central.
Right.
I just went to one of my professors who was a lawyer, who was my homeboy. I told you about my homeboy Yaji.
Mm-hmm.
It was his mom. So his dad played for Luther, like played drums for Luther. His mom used to play piano for like Barry White.
Wait, she's a lawyer? She's a lawyer. And she played piano for Barry White.
And she taught us music industry with another dude named Chip Sharon. But that's a whole nother story too.
That's nuts.
Chip used to play bass for some group, I forget. But yeah, he had a little record label. And so he assigned Yasra to her first deal, but he was teaching us music industry. She was, flying in to help teach us music industry. So it was crazy, like the amount of people we met. So yeah, and then Ninth has always just been a great supporter of things people do and trying to help people learn in different aspects. So, I'm always indebted to Ninth and Pooh and Fonte just showing love. I remember Fonte met my dad at a random wedding. One of his singers that used to sing on Foreign Exchange got married. And my dad sent me a picture with him and Fonte. And then my dad was like, I think you know my son. And Fonte was like, who's your son? He was like, Corleone. He was like, what? So
small world.
Such a small world.
Indeed. Yo, so we gotta touch on your medical prowess, especially, bro. You did a TED talk. I'm like, I remember seeing that it was done a while back. And I was like, hold on, bro. Like, what is going on? Clicking on that joint and being like, yeah, that's him. That is nuts, yo. That's nuts. And if I'm not mistaken, did you start that joint off with the Prince reference?
Okay. So, all right. I got to take you back a little bit, right? So I had a homegirl who was doing a conference. And she was like, I want you to be the closing keynote for this sexual health conference, right? So I was like, cool. So my process is different. Like, excuse me, I'm not like Jay-Z or Biggie, like at the point where I don't need to write anything down. But the way I write stuff down is different. Like, I don't do not necessarily complete thoughts. Gotcha. I do like these points of almost like a timeline of where I want to go. And then I may switch it around depending on how the flow is. So I'm always looking at it differently. I'm looking at it like an artist.
Right.
Because to me, this is artistry. So I do this closing keynote. This is so funny how everything comes full circle. I had met this lady years ago named Katrina Bryant. She's a spoken word artist, and she was amazing. And she had this whole CD of poetry where it was like real life, topics, but they all dealt with health. Like grandma's got AIDS and, some other stuff. And so when I used to do little conferences, I was working with like kids, middle school and high school age youth to go into like health career fields. We would have these health career conferences, and I was working with like Black Baptist churches at this point in the communities surrounding these churches across the state. And so I brought her in. I did like a different type of conference, not the let me talk to you, bore you half to death, and then, send you home. Right. We did like this empowering type of conference. So we brought in like people that could speak in a way that captured your attention. She was one of them. Also, really good friend of mine named Dr. Donna Battle. She wasn't a doctor at that time, but she is now. I know you're saying a lot of doctors, right?
Right, yeah.
She is like one of the most amazing preachers I've ever seen in my life, right? She used to be the youth pastor. She was the first youth pastor at the church, one of the churches I played for. And bruh, she would get up there and do her sermon with no notes, no paper. And she's spitting scriptures, she's spitting poems, and it's so smooth, like butter. And I'm like, yo, you got a gift. So we brought her on, we brought in the spoken word artist, Katrina Bryant, and it was a hit. It was a hit. Later on, we brought in like the first secretary, the first African-American U.S. Secretary for Health and Human Services, Dr. Lewis Sullivan, and then like Kid and Play came. He had like a whole news series called Brand News. So that's a whole nother story talking about him and how awesome he's been in this whole journey. So, yeah, we're doing these things. So, homegirl asked me to do closing keynote. So I'm like, all right, I got the vision how I want to do this, but I need some assistance, right? So I call up the spoken word artist. I hadn't talked to her in years and found her again. And we did something before that where I did a keynote on some tobacco advocacy stuff, tobacco prevention advocacy.
Right.
And then after my keynote, I brought her in to do one of her poems about smoking. And that's what gave me the idea of like how I was going to do this piece. And I was like, oh, we can do some damage doing it this way, right? So as I'm setting up the keynote, so I got Katrina on board to do it. And then I was like, I need a DJ. You ain't never been to no conference where the keynote had a DJ and a spoken word artist.
Exactly.
Right? I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, you haven't. So I called Sean Dunn, right? Or Finn, the DJ, as he is known as. And I said, yo, I need a DJ. This is gonna be the easiest money you ever make. He was like, why you say that? I said, I've already cut all the samples I need. All you gotta do is hit play. I done cut them, I done send them to you. All you gotta do is upload them, to your Serato and hit the button where the script tells you to hit it. He was like, bet. So I get in, and so the way it's a sexual health conference. So what I did was I took themes from The Color Purple and from Prince, and I kind of melded them together and took quotes from the movies and the music and the lifestyle. And so it was called From the Color Purple to Purple Rain, exploring the historical contents of sexual violence, sexual expression, and sexual health equity.
Wow.
Right? Put all that together. And as I would do different bridge points, I would have quotes. And so I had already chopped the songs up. So all Finn had to do was just play the music at the right time. And then in an intermission piece, I had the spoken word artist do like a couple of pieces that connected to the topics. Somebody from UNC, here we go with UNC again, right? Saw it, heard about it, absorbed it, experienced it. And they were like, yo, they invited me to do a TED Talk. They were setting up a TED Talk already. So they invited me based on the strength of that presentation. They were like, so I had this whole nother lineup of stuff I wanted to, bring to the world. They were like, that's cute. We want that as a TED Talk. So I'm like, what? And so that conference I spoke at was like in late summer of 2016. The TED Talk was January 17th of 2017, right? I had to take an hour-long presentation and condense it to like 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And do it in a manner in which it was more storytelling than it was like dictation or academic, right?
Yeah.
So the theme of the TED Talk was like, what if maternal child health, right? That was the hashtag. What is like, hashtag what if MCH. So you know this about me, but others may not. I'm a huge music head, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking, what if, right? So two things came to mind automatically. And I usually go with my gut on these things. It's like, whatever the first response is, I need to build off those. So I already knew what I was going to talk about, but I had to make the connection points to make it like flow and tell the story, right? So I started talking about two what ifs. Well, two what ifs that came to mind was when I was younger, I used to read comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And they had, Marvel had this whole series, and they're actually about to bring it back out now, of what if. So like, you know, and I think I said it, you know, like, what if Spider-Man was a part of the Fantastic Four?
Right.
Would it be a Fantastic Five? You know, I think I said that verbatim on a TED Talk. But there was also another what if. My favorite group, and it's not because they're from Philly, my favorite group in hip hop are the Roots. And they had a song that was like, you know, it started out like, what if we could just blink ourselves away? And I always remembered that. So when I saw that what if, I threw that in there too. So that's how I started my TED Talk, by bridging those things. So I use in work, I use the hustle that I learned doing hip hop, doing club promotions. You know, back when we used to hand out handbills and flyers and all that paper,
Right.
like making those rapports and relationships. That's how I can talk to people. I mean, because what if I told you, what if, what if I told you that I'm an introvert? You wouldn't believe me because you've been led to believe so much about people that are outgoing being being extroverts. But it's all about.
Actually, I learned from our mutual friend, Liddell McNair. The actual, yeah, he broke down the introverts versus extroverts, and it's really about how you get your energy, whether it's being around people or being alone. Yeah, he broke it down for me on the podcast actually.
Yeah, so and it's so funny because I was gonna mess you up today. I was gonna wear a de facto T-shirt that I still got in my closet, but I was like, no. He'd have to pay me for the promotion, you know.
Look, I told my wife I started to wear a Cornell University T-shirt since I was talking to you. Like,
that is funny. So, so I get that energy from like really just being, you know, to myself, and so, but I've learned how to talk to people because coming up and trying to get people to go to a party and go to a club and doing all this stuff, like I had to learn how to socialize with people. And it serves me to this day in the job I do to help, you know, minority and underserved people be connected to resources and opportunities to better their health and their well-being.
That is a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. It's so much we could talk about, bro. I told you before, we could talk for hours. We might have to get back and do this again because we pushed over an hour already and we didn't even got into the real medical stuff, the COVID and dealing with that and the actual disparities for minorities dealing with health, which is what you do on a daily basis. So I think we're gonna have to get back and do this again, bro.
Let's do it.
All right. So we'll call it part one. This is part one with my man. Oh, give your if you would like your social media for the people who want to follow you.
So I'm Cornell P. Wright, MPA. So there's different variations of what those are. I mean, I have a personal professional Twitter account. I have a personal professional Instagram account. I have a public figure page on Facebook, and then I also have LinkedIn, where, you know, people can find me. So I have a hashtag on all of those platforms. If you can't find me, because of course I'm not going to remember each one,
right?
The exact, you know, at and spelling of whatever each one is, but I do have a professional hashtag that I use when I'm posting like stuff professionally, and it's hashtag CPWMPA. Again, that's hashtag CPWMPA. So it's my initials and my degree.
Oh,
So if people are ever looking for me, they can find me that.
absolutely, absolutely. Once again, it's the good brother Cornell Wright, aka Corleone, the Simpson Lab. I appreciate it, bro. We're gonna get back and do this again real soon.
I appreciate you, man. You be safe.
No doubt, no doubt. Brother Wright, Sauce, out here. And let's see how we gonna stop it again.